All right, CNT125, we're working on Chapter 10. We have a little section here. We're talking about people risks and what companies can do to reduce these risks. Companies can do a couple things to try to minimize the risk of these insider threats or potential problems inside the company from employees, vendors, etc. One is background checks. For new hires, contractors, that sort of thing. Doing a background check to see if there's anything that would be a red flag or an alarm for working at said facility with said data. A side note for you guys working in IT, eventually down the road, you will most likely have a series of background checks completed, and you might even go to the level of having secret clearances. So it's one of those things that kind of have that on your radar, that's probably going to be coming down the road. As you guys graduate and move on, every now and then, I have a FBI agent that will come and visit me and ask a series of questions on a former student as part of a background check. So it's not uncommon to have that happen as you move into jobs in IT. Principle of least privilege. Employees and contractors are usually giving only enough access or privileges into data, folders, files on servers to do their job, and then that access is typically terminated as immediately as that job or particular project is done. And this is the kind of thing that needs to be managed on servers and other pieces of equipment in the network, that I will give you just enough access to do what you need to do, and as soon as that's over, that account is closed down, terminated, etc. Once upon a time when my mom was retiring from her job, she worked in a hospital and then worked in health insurance. As she was closing up, her desk, if you will, for the last day, security escorted her out, and she was really worried. She's like, "I thought I did something wrong." I said, "No." I said, that's probably just the standard procedure for that facility to make sure you were not, downloading data onto a USB drive or an external hard drive and taking it with you so you could either compromise it or sell it, that sort of thing. They were just making sure as you left, there was no company information traveling along with you, that you were only taking your mug and your water bottle and those kind of things as you left. And that might be part of a process or procedure in a facility. Oops. Checks and balances on employees' behavior. Some places will do things like you have scheduled access. You can only access things during a certain set of work hours. If you try to access it when it's not your shift or on a weekend or a holiday, you won't have access to it. And that's to make sure that, hey, you have access during work hours, not when you are traveling to another country and might actually be compromised, that somebody is trying to extract information from you and you're logging in from another country, blah, blah, blah. So these kinds of things are mandatory vacations, job rotations, changing shifts, are all a way to try to keep unnecessary data moving around in and out of a company, that sort of thing. Data loss prevention solution identifies sensitive data network and principle of being copied, emailed, downloaded, saved to Google Drive, Cloud Drive, that sort of thing. So certain stuff, no matter what, is not going to be able to get moved. You might be able to view, but you're not going to be able to move it anywhere. All of those are techniques to try to help with minimizing these people risks, especially the insider threats. Next area they talk about are some technology risks. One of the first ones they mention is the denial of service. Denial of service is when a legitimate user and legitimate employee of the company is unable to access the regular resources they need to use, whether it be files on a server, a website that they use, and that's all because an attacker is causing a disruption so they cannot get to it. This is usually achieved by flooding a system with so many requests that the server can't respond, and in some cases the server itself is overwhelmed and the server may need to actually reboot. I always use this example. Think about if you have a Windows computer and you have too many processes or too many things running on that computer. What typically happens? It locks up, blue screens, and maybe even reboots. If somebody is doing many service requests against a Windows server and it overwhelms it, what's the server most likely going to do? lock up, and need to reboot. Well, while it's rebooting, those services and resources are not available. That is now a disruption that is either causing the company, lost business, lost revenue, lost customers, etc., but might even also be a piece of, now if that's not available, we have access to this thing over here. Okay, so the denial service is literally disrupting that flow of information, and it's usually caused by a series of requests flooding to a particular server. There's a couple different types of denial service attacks. First one is your distributed denial of service attack. This is orchestrated through many sources. Many machines act like zombies. They might have downloaded something that has a piece of code hidden in it, and it sits there and waits. That little bot sits there and waits until a certain day or a certain time, and then the control computer triggers all of these, maybe thousands of computers, to start hitting a certain website or a web server with requests to cause it to be overwhelmed and possibly even shut down. That's your distributed denial service attack. So, all these different computers that went to blah website and bought something, a little bot got tagged onto them, and then on a certain day at a certain time, your control computer activates those bots to start hammering away at that blah website to overwhelm it. The reflective, distributed reflective, is bounced off of uninfected computers, so it actually acts like almost like you're spoofing. So in this case, you're doing the same kind of thing you did before, but I'm bouncing them off of a computer that's not even aware that it has a bot or anything like that. It's literally bouncing those requests off, so it looks like it's coming from these thousands of computers instead of this one computer. Amplified. Many small requests are sent, and they trigger protocols. With these kind of protocols, tend themselves to amplify. So again, we did just like we did the reflective. Here, we're now involving protocols that tend to amplify the effect. So we're looking at these kind of protocols to amplify our effect of this distributed denial of service. And the last one, or actually no, there's two more. Permanent DOS, literally damaging an operating system firmware on a router, switch, that sort of thing. And that we've heard the term probably bricking, where you've damaged the firmware, the image on the operating system on. We damage that on a router, on a switch, and that's going to cause a major disruption to a chunk of the network. That would cause a big disruption, and maybe even a day or two until that's replaced, restored, etc. A friendly denial of service, this is really unintentional. This kind of thing can happen on a day like I picked on Cyber Monday, where tens of thousands of people are hitting a website instead of thousands of people. So there's a deal. Hey, there's a deal on a blah, blah, blah. So, tens of thousands of people hit a certain website, and it overwhelms it. It can't respond to all those requests. So again, you get timeouts, and potentially even that website, that server has to shut down and reboot. So there's a period of time where there's an outage. That can be unintentional. We have other attacks besides denial of service. There's an on-path attack. This used to go by the name man-in-the-middle attack. That name is still around. You still hear that. This case, you're actually acting as like the middleman. You inject yourself, you insert yourself into the data stream, and because you're now sitting in the middle, I receive a request from a laptop, and I forward it onto the network. I'm sitting in the middle, and I can extract information from that, and I'm really looking for usernames, passwords, that kind of thing. So I use a wireless type of scenario because this is a relatively easy way where I set up a access point. I make my laptop look like an access point, and people connect to me, and then I pass that on to the network, and now everything's flowing through me, and now I can do things like Wireshark, etc., and try to look for these insecure logins and gather names and passwords and those sorts of things. That's what your man-in-the-middle attack is. Deauthentication attack. With users connecting wirelessly, they need to authenticate to an access point or a wireless network, and an attacker could send frames to the wireless network, to that wireless device, and cause the devices on there to deauthenticate. So it's essentially like a Wi-Fi denial of service attack. So you're overwhelming or sending fake messages to that access point to literally boot people off that wireless piece of the network. Other things that can be a problem are insecure protocols and services. There are certain protocols that are not secure. Other ones are more preferred because they are secure. So this would be something to look for in a network. Are there any of these protocols that are inherently insecure being used? Why? Can we phase them out in favor of something that's more secure? So things like FTP, if you ever capture an FTP session, FTP is clear text. Username and password are clear text. So maybe a secure FTP needs to be used where you're adding SSH or something on top of that to add encryption. Using plain HTTP anymore is all clear text. HTTPS adds in the secure socket layer TLS, transport layer security, adds that in where you now have encryption. Telnet is clear text. Are we able to either tunnel that in an IPsec encrypted tunnel, or are we able to migrate, update to SSH? Are we able to update our access protocol to SSH that uses security, uses encryption? So these kind of things, these are the kinds of things you're looking for with your protocols. When we do our security lab, we're going to capture some Telnet and then capture some SSH and look at the insecure versus secure protocol, so you can see what the preference is there. Another technology risk would be DNS poisoning. Altering DNS records on a DNS server, the attacker now can redirect traffic maybe to a place that they have a server and can act as the middleman. Or just cause a disruption that you're not going to get to blah website or blah resource. Because your DNS server, remember, think back to 120, your DNS server is the one that when people request a website name, the DNS server responds with, here's the IP. So if I can cause the name request to point to a fake IP or an IP of a server that I'm running, I can disrupt that flow of information. Backdoors. Some softwares, some operating systems, some softwares have security flaws that allow unauthorized access for hackers to gain access to using specific maybe port numbers or certain protocols that are not being blocked. This is the kind of thing that regular updates on operating systems, software updates are usually trying to block or fix those backdoors. And those might be some common things that are known that an update to an operating system, update to the software would fix. Next section, we'll move into some malware.